Hey guys, oh my gosh, happy Monday night. I am so excited that so many could join us tonight. This is going to be an excellent time. And if for any of you that don't know me, I'm Maria Crawford, the owner of Edge Integrative Wellness, and I'm here with Dr. Rebecca Warren. A lot of you know, one of our core cultures at Edge is education. And I really like for you guys to know what's going on inside your body so you can be empowered, you can take control, and you can get your health back. And I bring a gift to you tonight with Dr. Rebecca. She is a functional wellness practitioner. She received her doctorate of chiropractic from Life Wellness in Marietta, Georgia. And then later, she has become a leading expert in hormonal disorders. She is the creator of the Lifeless Thyroid List. I did this last time we spoke too.
Thyroid List. It's a hard word. It's hard for me too. Yeah.
It's going to just start rolling off my tongue. So the Thyroid List Life podcast. And she currently works in Chattanooga, currently still in Chattanooga, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And she also works virtually. She's a wife, she's a mother, and she's also a fellow practitioner HCF Platinum provider. So Dr. Warren has her own story of pain to purpose, and I love for her to share it. She's so well-spoken, and you guys are in for an amazing treat.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maria, for introducing me. That was awesome. It's always like so nice to have other people introduce me like, oh yeah, that's everything I've done. And
I'm sure there's I'm sure there's a spiel that goes on forever. I just don't know the entire spiel, but
I love all variations. It's all good. I usually share my story every single time. And yeah, I want to jump right in and to share with you guys. So today's going to be about Thyroid 101. And I want to share Thyroid 101 with you guys because 101 is kind of like, I'm kind of tricking you by saying that. Usually you think 101, it's like, okay, pretty basic stuff. This information, if you take it, you apply it, you put it to your heart, put it to your mind. Right now, get a notebook out, get a pen out. If you have your old labs, go ahead and pull them up as I'm doing this presentation, because this is going to be absolutely life-changing. There is no getting your thyroid well if you do not know and understand this information. And you have to know it.
She means it. Get a pen and paper out. Write this down. And during this lecture, you guys, there is in your right hand of your screen, you guys can type out questions and we can ask them, we can answer them throughout the lecture as well at the end. So write them down, get your pen and paper right now.
Okay. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, because this is information that can really change your life. Because I get asked, I have been doing this I've been looking at the studies. I've been working on my own health in regards to healing and balancing out my thyroid hormones for a decade and a half of this information. And I know that if you take it and you do something with it, it's going to be completely life-changing. But going back to this, I get asked like these questions, I get asked hundreds of times over and over and over again. And before you can take any step in the direction of healing and supporting your thyroid, you've got to understand what the heck is going on. And so for me, you know, my health journey started when I was 16 years old. I was walking out of a movie theater and I thought I was having a heart attack. I was having chest pain. It was horrible pain. I was so scared. I fell to the dirty sidewalk in a fetal position. And I had never been to the emergency room. So I was scared of what it looked like to get in an ambulance. And so we had a family friend who was with us. She rushed me into the emergency room. We get there. I'm in so much pain. They hooked me up to morphine and I'm in and out. And I remember just coming to one of the times my mom's there, my dad's there, my mom's crying, she's worried. And the doctor's explaining to them, well, you know, your 16-year-old daughter had, it looks like over 1,000 little stones in her gallbladder. Like all these stones in my gallbladder at 16 years old. And the doctor told my parents, it's okay, though, we're going to get it taken care of. Why? Because they can cut it out and they can keep moving their own way. I mean, usually when I do these talks in a room, I have people raise their hand and say, how many of you guys have had underlying thyroid issues or been diagnosed with thyroid issue and have had some type of gallbladder issue, a sluggish gallbladder, or had your gallbladder removed? Because there's a connection there between your thyroid hormones and your gallbladder. But my doctor sent me on my way. And I remember thinking at 16, as I was recovering at home, I was recovering more from the drug withdrawal. They had to give me so much morphine than from the surgery itself. And I remember thinking to myself, this isn't normal. This isn't right. Like, I didn't know anything about health or nutrition. This is over a decade and a half ago. This is 17, 18 years ago. There wasn't even organic food. You're lucky if you could find soy milk. But I remember thinking to myself, I got to ask my doctor, because I don't want this for me. I want my life to look different. And this just doesn't seem right. So
And
I went to, what was that?
I was going to say, 16 years ago, we didn't see gallbladder in kids at all. I mean, it's more prevalent now in the last 5 years, but 16 years ago, you'd never see it. Like, you were a complete outlier. That's terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the same thyroid issues I had at that age, you also didn't see it in kids either, but now you do. So, yeah, so I went to my doctor and I asked my doctor, I was sitting in my room and he checked out my scar and everything looked great. And I said, doc, I don't know, I feel like I need to change something. And at that point, all I thought health was losing weight, and I could lose weight. I was always a chubbier child. And so the doctor said, okay, yeah, no worries. He walked out of the room, came back in with a Xerox copy of the food pyramid, gave me like an article and a picture of a food pyramid, and sent me on my way. And I remember thinking, well, if he's not concerned about this underlying issue, then maybe it's not an issue at all. We did get it cut out, so maybe it's all taken care of.
And that
3
food
years
pyramid
later.
looked awesome.
What was that?
And the food pyramid from back then was spot on.
And I got it in black and white, even better, right? Black and white, even better. And I went home. And what I did not know is I had all these signs of a thyroid issue brewing. And when I was 19, I was driving with my parents. I was home from college. I looked over my shoulder. My mom found this big lump in my neck and she said, "Oh my gosh, we have to go get that figured out." I did all these tests, these needle biopsy, and I'll never forget 19 years old sitting in my doctor's office. I remember my mom was in the corner. I can remember the beige room. And I remember my doctor coming in and saying, I'm sorry to say this, but your daughter has cancer. Your daughter has thyroid cancer. But the good news is, if there's a cancer to have, this is the good kind. Like, that's what they tell people with thyroid cancer.
And they still say that today.
What was that?
They still say that today.
They still say that to this day. And the thing that sucks about it, though, is the same things that cause your thyroid to become dysfunctional, the same type of autoimmune issues, the same type of toxicity issues, the same reason you might need armor thyroid and synthroid are the same things that can lead to cancer. And no one ever talks to you about it until you're sitting in that doctor's office and they're telling you this. There's no choice but to cut it out. That's it. That's all I had, was to get it cut out and have high dose radiation. Now, that's what we did. I was scared. I was hopeless. I had no answers, but everything was about medicating and cutting. And at 19, it was unheard of, but the doctor said, well, it's good. Why is it a good cancer? Because they can cut it out and put you on a little pill for the rest of your life. You become a pharmaceutical patient for the rest of your life. Your body is dependent. You take away this dynamic organ that changes and adapts and it supports you through different days, weeks, and seasons, puts you on a pill. And that's what I did. And I left there. Well, I got my thyroid cut out and then I got high dose radiation, which was completely unnecessary. But I had no hope. I had no answers. I had no guidance. And I left there more fearful, more hopeless, but thinking I did it, right? I got it taken care of. You get your gallbladder cut out. Why? Because you want to get the problem taken care of. You get your appendix out because you get a hysterectomy because maybe finally I'm going to have relief and I get the problem taken care of. You get your thyroid cut out. That's what I thought. And that was completely false, because the same things that caused my thyroid to create that tumor is the same thing that was still there. And so a year after I did everything they told me to do, I was on their medication. I was seeing one of the best endocrinologists, right? Because who goes to the worst? Everyone always says, I went to the best endocrinologist, and they say everything is fine, right? I went to the best. And a year later, I started noticing that I was kind of like weight loss resistant. I was doing CrossFit. And I was like, okay, well, let me try going vegan because, vegans are supposed to be healthy, right? No, I just used it as a way to restrict myself because I'm not losing weight. How am I working out and I'm not losing weight? And I would tell my doctor, and my doctor would do my labs, and everything would look fine. And I'd be like, but I know something's not fine. And then I started struggling with depression. That meant like I would wake up every day with this heaviness I couldn't shake. It was like a blanket that I wore every day. Of just I just felt down and I could not shake it. And then at night, I struggled with anxiety. I would worry about situations and things that I had no control over. I would replay things in my head and I couldn't figure out why I felt that way because I would go to my doctor and I would get my labs done and I was taking my Synthroid and they were telling me that everything looked okay. I remember I would always be prepared to go to my doctor's office, my appointment, I'm going to get this figured out. And I would leave there thinking, is there something wrong with me? And then I lost my period. And it wasn't until I got into a car accident. I actually got into a car accident. It was a hidden blessing. I went to a doctor of chiropractic's office who taught me for the first time ever that the body's created to heal itself. That the reason that happened to my thyroid was because my body was sick and I needed to heal my body or else I will continue to be sick for the rest of my life. But I had control over that. And that's when at 20 years old, I drew a line in the sand. I said, there's not going to be one doctor that's going to know more about my health than me. I fired my doctor at 20, not because I was ego and because of Dr. Google, because if I didn't, I don't know where I would have ended up. I fired him and I took my health into my own hands. So I've been following the studies for a decade and a half about what it looks like for medication, for hormone levels, for lab results. And what I'm going to teach you guys here, and I'll go ahead and share my screen, is how you can start taking your health into your own hands, even as you work with Maria, even as you start changing up what you're eating. You need to feel empowered so you know what's going on with your health. So you know what's going on with your lab so that you know when things need to change, you need to take a step back and address that.
When she was saying the symptoms, was anybody like, she's telling my story. She's telling my story. I think you resonated with a lot of people right there.
Oh, yeah. And I'll even resonate more because I'm going to keep on telling you guys what I keep hearing over and over again. And I want to leave with this last thing about my own story. My own story is this. After all of that was said and done, I cut out my vital organ. I'm a pharmaceutical patient. Well, I do something different, but that's for a whole nother talk. But after it was all said and done, the type of cancer I had, they had known within that scientific community that it was completely unnecessary to cut out my thyroid and give me radiation. In fact, I had a higher risk of more complications, of more damage to my health, having that surgery and having radiation than having left my thyroid there. After all of that. And you don't want to end up in that place, right? You want to feel, you don't want to live every single day, how do I get by? You want to live every day, how can I be the best, right? How can I be the best version of me? How can I achieve goals that are going to take me to the next level? You don't want to just figure out how do you stay out of the hospital? How do you live a full life, right? So, absolutely. And then I think Mason said we need to, if you guys have any questions that you guys might have as this is coming up, make sure to add it into the chat window. And if I can see it, I'm going to address that for you guys as I see those questions pop up. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys here. Okay. And he showed me how to do this. All right. Thyroid 101. You can find me at drrebeccawarren.com. I do have a free Thyroid Labs ebook if you guys want to check that out. And you can find me at Dr. Rebecca Warren on Instagram and on Facebook. So let's go ahead and talk about where we're starting at right now. The sad reality. All right. 20 million Americans have thyroid disease. The scarier number is how many people are completely unaware that they have a thyroid problem. And I'm going to talk about some symptoms to be aware of. But if you're on here, you're either already been diagnosed or you're ready to do something about it, even if your doctor's not helping you, right? So, that's you, right? But there's millions upon millions upon millions of Americans that are getting put on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication Millions of women are having unnecessary hysterectomies and men getting low T injections to get by because they have an underlying thyroid issue that's not being addressed. Now, the thyroid gland is a small butterfly-shaped gland of the endocrine system. It's in front of your throat. It controls metabolism, so how your body stores and burns energy, weight gain, and loss, and the amount of energy you have during the day. You have the parathyroid glands. They produce calcitonin, so they, control your calcium levels going throughout your body and how you can use that for your bones and how to maintain healthy bones, especially as you age. Osteopenia and osteoporosis is it's running rampant, especially with women as they age. Now, the big thing to understand is that T3, the thyroid hormone, will affect almost every single in your body. So when you have a thyroid issue and you're fatigued, that fatigue you feel on the outside, it's only a fraction of how fatigued your body is on a cellular level. And that's so important to understand, that you need adequate thyroid for everything to function, for insulin to be released, to be able to metabolize carbs, to release leptin and ghrelin, to ovulate, to go through perimenopause or menopause appropriately, to have enough hormones. You need it to digest foods. You need it to wake up in the morning. You need it to handle stress. There's not one thing in the body that doesn't get affected by having low T3. Now, we're going to talk about hypothyroidism here. I have hyper over here. Hyper is going to be more apparent. But I want to clarify something really quick about hyperthyroidism. There's a common misconception with people that are on thyroid medication that when they're on too much of it, they think they have hyperthyroidism. You do not have hyperthyroidism. You just have too much medication. So you're having hyper symptoms. So that's different, because that can be quickly corrected by changing your dosing. So being aware of that, because getting in a state of ketosis, you might need less thyroid medication. Actually, if you are doing keto in a very nourishing, healing way with fasting, you will absolutely over time need less thyroid medication. And so a lot of people will feel overwhelmed with that. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I thought it was hypo, and now I'm having heart palpitations, and I'm feeling hot, and I'm having all these symptoms, and I guess I'm hyper now." No, it just means that your body doesn't need all that medication that your doctor had put you on through all these years. It's understanding the hyperthyroidism is a disease state of the thyroid where you're producing too much of the thyroid hormone. Now, the one thing I want you to understand when we're looking at hypothyroid symptoms, there's these symptoms that you hear of, right? You can't lose weight, you're weight loss resistant, changes with your hair. Like there's these major symptoms that you hear about when it comes to hypothyroidism. But the one thing I want you to understand is that only 10%, according to a study that came out, only 10% of Americans that are struggling with hypothyroidism will have overt symptoms. 90% will have symptoms that don't look like thyroid issues, right? Again, I've mentioned some of them already. So constipation, digestive issues. How many of you guys might go once a day to once every couple of days, right? That's going to be associated with low T3, depression and anxiety, skin changes. So it's really, the way I talk about it is that it's going to affect how you feel and how you function in your body. When your T3 is off, you feel off. And that's why I do these types of talks, because the best expert about what's going on in your body is you, not your doctor, not me, not the best endocrinologist at the best hospital. It is you. And you have to trust what you know to be true, because you've lived in this body for decades, right? You know that something is off. You might not be able to diagnose yourself. You might not know how to order the labs, although you will at the end of this. But you have to know and trust that, hey, I've noticed a change within my body. I noticed that I'm lacking sleep. My bowel movements are not normal. I feel like I'm struggling now with more being down and struggling with my emotions. I need to do something for myself. So I want to go ahead and make sure that we understand this. Now, when you have, I'm going to go ahead and skip really quick over here. Sorry about this, guys. I have a tuck in my throat. When you have a thyroid issue, this is in a medical system, a conventional medical system, this is going to be the approach. And I'm going to tell you why this can be very, very, very beneficial for you and why this can be absolutely the worst for you. And I'm going to tell you why. But when you go into your doctors, right, or when you're getting this lab work done and you don't have enough T4, or if you don't have enough T3, I told you, you're going to feel like crap. You're just not going to metabolize your food well. You're not going to metabolize your carbs well. You're not going to have energy. You're not moving your bowel. You're not regulating your temperature. You're just not regulating your system very well at all. And so the reason why this type of approach can be so helpful for you is that if you don't have enough hormone, depending on how long you've been that way, how long you've been that way for, putting in hormone into your body can be really, really helpful. So there are, two different types. There's T4 only type of medication, and it can be synthetic. And then there's more of a natural desiccated thyroid hormone that'll include T3, T4. Now, I am a fan of the natural desiccated thyroid hormone. And as I explain what's going on in your body when you make thyroid hormones, you'll understand why a majority of the people that I work with do really well with, T4 and T3. I do have a small population that's just fine on T4. You know what? We don't change that. But I'll explain all of this here in the next few slides as to why someone might feel better on T4 and T3 versus T4. But the thing that I don't love about this situation and why it can be detrimental for you is that when you take thyroid hormones, what you're doing is you're putting in the end product, right? You are missing any area, whether it's in the thyroid or the cellular level or in the liver and the gut, you're missing correcting the problem, right? So what people will do is they'll go to the doctor and hopefully they can find someone that actually listens to them, right? And then you get on natural desiccated thyroid hormone and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like I have clarity in my mind and I feel so much better. Well, yeah, you do, because you just put in the end product that you're not making. But what ends up happening over time is it will stop working. Either your thyroid will get worse and you're going to need more and more and more medication, or you're not going to be converting it, or your gut's going to get worse. Whatever the underlying issue is there, you're going to need more and more and more over time if you do not address the underlying issue. And then what ends up happening is 10, 15 years down the road when you're like, gosh, can I get off of this? Well, I don't know. You spent 15 years on the end product while your thyroid was being destroyed from toxins, or while your thyroid is being destroyed from an autoimmune issue or gut microbiome or underlying infection. So that's really important to understand, is that if you want to take this approach where you're completely depleted and you need thyroid hormones, the goal is to get on those thyroid hormones so that you can have enough energy and drive to work on your health, so that hopefully, depending on how long you've had your thyroid issue, you can get off of it. So the one thing I want to talk about is how this is all connected. What are the labs that you need to make sure you're getting done? And how is the thyroid making hormones, and how is it released? Okay. So I'm just going to go right here and I'm going to draw. They showed me how to do this right before.
We're going to see the artista in you.
Oh, yes. I'm so amazing at this. My coaching clients laugh at me when I do this. I'm like, listen, I'm not a drawer. Okay. I am a doctor. Okay. So what we're going to go ahead and see here. So in your brain, you have the hypothalamus, and you'll see a prettier picture once I'm done, speaking about this here. How do I do this? Here you go. So you have the hypothalamus in your brain, and your hypothalamus, you may have heard of it from the HPA axis. And HPA axis is hypothalamus pituitary and adrenals. But the hypothalamus, there's a hypothalamus pituitary thyroid, there's a hypothalamus pituitary gonads, like reproductive organs and ovaries and all of that. The idea is that your hypothalamus is always looking at its environment to determine if we're safe or not. It's determining internal and external environment, and then it's going to talk to the pituitary, which is in the brainstem, to affect all hormones in the body, right? So this is really important for you to understand, because is it possible, if you're chronically stressed, if the pandemic, you have the news on and you're seeing all these death numbers and cases and all this fighting and all this division, and you're sitting there every day hearing this over and over again, could this affect what your body is doing in regards to thyroid production? Heck yes. I want to go ahead and tell you guys this. Any kind of chemical, emotional, or physical stressor, your body will register, and it can affect your thyroid. I want to give you an example. When you were in school and you had to give a talk in front of the class, how did you feel? The mere thought of standing in front of a room full of people, what did it physically do to you? A thought physically created symptoms of butterflies in your stomach. Maybe you had loose stools, maybe you had to go pee, maybe you wanted to vomit, right? That's how powerful the emotional stressors can be. So that's
Some
really
people are
important.
sweating right now. They're physically probably starting to sweat. Sorry, guys.
No, they're like, oh, wow, I didn't even think about that. But it's important. It's important to understand that, because from the hypothalamus, your body's going to say, do we need more thyroid hormones to deal with these stressors, or do we need less? Like, do we need more to deal with this toxin? Do we need more thyroid hormones to deal with all these carbs that we might be over consuming, right? So the hypothalamus is in the brain, the pituitary is in the brainstem. And from the pituitary to the thyroid, that's where TSH comes in. Okay. We have probably all heard of thyroid stimulating hormone, because it used to be the gold standard of thyroid testing. And I want to make sure you guys understand, I said used to be. And I've seen it change in the studies in the last decade and a half. When I first started studying it myself for my own health, the studies used to say, well, if someone's TSH was normal and they still have symptoms, it's because they're not following recommendations. And now they're like, oh, wait a minute, there's more to it than just what the brain is saying to the thyroid. And I'll explain that here in a second. So the purpose of TSH, when it leaves the pituitary, is to tell the thyroid to release T4. But TSH is a pituitary hormone. It is not a thyroid hormone. It's a pituitary hormone. It can tell you what the pituitary is doing. It can tell you what other things are doing, are communicating with the pituitary. And I'm going to tell you, the pituitary is only looking at circulating T4, not free T3. So it is possible to have an underlying thyroid issue where you're symptomatic and your TSH look normal because your free T4 hasn't been affected. All right, we'll get to that here in a second. It'll make a lot more sense here. So TSH is going to come from the pituitary to the thyroid. And then from the thyroid, you are going to make, I'm going to put free T4 here. You're going to make a majority of free T4 and some free T3. A majority of free T4. So free T4 is a marker of the thyroid, right? It's letting you know, is my thyroid gland producing this thyroid hormone? But I want to make sure you guys understand that total is not going to help you when you're looking at tests. It's the free and unbound and available thyroid hormone that is going to help you. It's going to help you understand if your body is not only making thyroid hormones, but making sure that you're having it unbound and available to be used. But some of you guys have doctors in the past that do TSH and free T4 because they're, up to date on everything. Still not enough, because free T4 is inactive. It has to be activated in order to efficiently bind with your cell. This is a cell, guys.
It's a beautiful cell.
Thank you.
I love it.
So free T4, and the reason why a lot of doctors will only do TSH and free T4 is because if they're prescribing you a T4 medication like Synthroid, they might be like, well, I just need to make sure that she has, enough medication, right? After that, it's fine. The body will know what to do. But that is not the case. And you'll see here why. So free T4 has to be activated. And where does it go? A majority of it will go to the liver, and then some goes into the gut. So, yep, that weird looking gun thing is a liver. Okay. And then this thing here is a gut. And the goal is that you have a nice, healthy liver that is functioning, that has vitamin D, that has minerals, that has all these enzymatic processes in place, that's not overwhelmed, so that you can convert it to free T3. And then you also want a good, healthy gut, normal bowel movements, good gut bacteria, so that free T4 can go out and make free T3. And it is free T3, not total, that will go and bind to the cell. So free T4 is not enough because that's not what's binding to your cell. And I don't know how many people I've sat in consults with, and they're on free T4 only, and we do the full set of labs, and I'll let you know what ranges to look for. And their free T4 is fine, but they're not converting it. They're not activating it, right? And I ask them, before your doctor put you on this medication, did he ask about liver function? Did he look at liver function? Did he check blood sugar? Did he look at gut function? Did they ask about bowel movements? Did they make sure that your liver and your digestive system was going to do its job with this medication they gave you? And they would say no. And then I'd be like, well, how healthy do you think your digestive system is? Well, not really. I have acid reflux or I have some skin issues. Well, how healthy do you think your liver is? Well, not very well, because I've been on medication or I've had high blood sugar in the past. Like, your liver filters out toxins every single day. We have to support that. We have to move toxins. We have to clear out that liver. But doctors will put you on them and sit back, and this looks normal and looks normal, but this is not. They don't know that. They don't know that. They're only testing incomplete labs. So you have to get TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. I will tell you we're on those labs, but free T4, free T3, and then I'm going to talk about three more here. What happens within the liver is that when you put free T4 in the liver, you make a little bit of what's called reverse T3. Okay. And reverse T3 is kind of like a backup reservoir. The purpose of reverse T3 is your body's going to store up some T3 as reverse T3 in times of stress, if we're sick. Like, in other words, if there's something going on that your body can't keep up with your demand for thyroid hormones, you have a lot easier to get T3, put it through the liver, T3. But this is the thing. Reverse T3 can be such a useful tool. It can vary from lab to lab. It can vary according to your stress levels. But free T3 and reverse T3 look similar. They're similar. They're just reverse T3 is an inactive free T3, which means that if you have a lot of circulating reverse T3, it can compete with free T3 with binding to the cell. So sometimes you can have normal TSH, normal free T4, low end of the range free T3, but high reverse T3, and have all of your hypothyroid symptoms, because now this reverse T3, where's my pen color? Green. Now this reverse T3 is going to shut out free T3 and bind to the cell. And when it binds to the cell, it doesn't give you all the amazing things that free T3 gives you. It's like, I like to explain it. It's like, you put a key into the door and it fits, but it doesn't turn. And you're like, that's weird. Like, it wasn't the right key. That's what reverse T3 does. Another thing that reverse T3 is really important to know and understand is that I have found people, I found thyroid issues, and we've caught it early on before they've completely crashed. And the reason why is I can notice when your body's not making enough of this free T3, it's going to start recruiting from here, right? I don't know what that was. Okay, it's going to start recruiting from the reverse T3. So I'll see people have free T3 that looks good, but it's not actually good because your reverse T3 is almost out of the range or on the low end of the range. You're pulling from reverse T3. Now, the final thing, look at that crazy picture. I want you guys to see this picture.
Isn't this
When
so helpful though? It's like
Yeah.
seriously so helpful. And I love the key analogy. That was great. And this is, I'm sure this is really starting to make sense for people.
Yes, thank you. And I like to draw this out like this because when your doctor, when you go in and they're like, oh, you have a thyroid issue? I got it. Here's some Synthroid. And like, look at all of this. Like, getting on of it and sending you on your way is just setting you up for more health issues. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is TPO antibodies. I'll talk about TPO antibodies on these separate slides here, but let's go ahead. I'm going to go here. Okay. So this is what I talked to you about, and then I'm going to talk about TPO antibodies and why you guys need to be very, very, very aware of your antibody status. So look at that. I got that hypothalamus there. You got that pituitary. That's what that looks like. Communication comes from the top down. So if you need thyroid hormone, heck, get it. Do your thing. Get on it. Feel better. But you've got to address where that problem is coming from top to bottom, right? You got to go upstream to down. And you got to correct that issue so that you need less and less medication over time. Remember that T4 in the liver, a little bit of T3 from the thyroid in the digestive tract, and then it goes into reverse T3, and that's for your body's way of conserving energy. Now, hypothalamus again, it's necessary to survive and to thrive. It's a master control center. It's like an AC unit, right? Like on your wall. When you turn on that AC unit and you have it on auto, if things are too hot or things are too cold, without you even having to thinking about it, boom, that AC goes into play. Hypothalamus is even more intelligent, more powerful, unbelievably more powerful than that. You don't realize every day how your body goes into play to adapt to the stressors that you put on it. And that's why when you become more aware of it, when you become like, okay, where's my mind right now? What's my toxicity level? How am I eating and nourishing myself? Like, do I have any spinal misalignments, any subluxations? Like, where am I at right now? Because it's not just going to affect your thyroid. It affects every single system in your body. So, like I said, TSH, free T4, free T3, reverse T3, and thyroglobulin antibodies and thyroid peroxidase antibodies. Okay, so this is what I want to talk about thyroid antibodies. I think that what is being done with thyroid antibodies should be medical malpractice. I think it is insane that doctors allow people to just walk out with these robust thyroid antibody numbers and just send them on their way, especially with what we know about it, right? So Tpu antibodies, it's an autoimmune response that attacks thyroid peroxidase. It's an enzyme that helps make the thyroid hormones, right? It oxidizes iodine. And thyroglobulin antibodies is an immune response that attacks the thyroglobulin, which is the protein to make thyroid hormone. More and more studies are finding the problem is that when you go to a doctor that doesn't look at your body as a whole, they only see you as separate systems. So you go to an endocrinologist that will only look at the thyroid, and then you go to a GI specialist that will only look at the gut, and then you go to an OBGYN that will only look right at your and no one's looking at it as a whole. So you go in there, you find out you have thyroid antibodies, your doctor says, okay, you have thyroid antibodies, and sends you on your way. And the reason why is there's no medication on the market that can bring down your thyroid antibodies. You have to find your trigger. You have to heal the gut, and if you have to dig deeper, then you dig deeper. But the reason why this is an issue is because it's an autoimmune issue. It is a systemic immune issue. It's not going to just stay in the thyroid. We now have studies that show that thyroid antibodies can cross the blood-brain barrier. It affects your brain function. It increases your chances. You're 3 times as likely to develop more thyroid autoimmune issues. So that means when you go to your doctor and you get on Synthroid and you have Tpu antibodies that are 200 or thyroglobulin antibodies that are like, 50 or 10 or whatever, you're on hormones feeling better while your body is breaking down because you have an autoimmune issue. And it's not just going to stay to your thyroid, it is going to affect your overall health and well being and set you up for more autoimmune disorders. And that's why it's important for you to know these numbers and then do something about it, right? This is the first step. The first step is what we're talking about here, right, guys? So look how cute that little picture is. I should have used that as a drawing, but okay.
Oh, yours is better. Yours is better.
Thank you. Okay, as we're wrapping up here, I like ranges. I think what we have seen is that in the past, medical ranges were too broad. And I think functional ranges can be too, right? I think finding where you best feel within a functional range is going to be vitally important, right? So TSH, we know across the board over and over again in studies at a bare minimum that TSH should be under 2.5. I mean, you can look it up right now on PubMed, which is crazy because if you go to a doctor and you're in there at 3.8 or 4, they'd be like, oh, you're fine. Well, no, not according to the newest data, like 2.5, especially, I mean, they have studies that show women that are higher than a 2.5 TSH, there's an increased connection with miscarrying. That's crazy because you could still be within range, right? Medical ranges. Now, free T4, you want it to be 1.1 to 1.5. I have different numbers for different people. I have someone who's older and she just does great at like 1.4 on the upper end of that functional range. And there's some people that are just amazing at 1.1, but you want that to be 1.1, 1.5 within that range. There's too many people out there under ones. Big red flag. No, that's not enough. The goal here isn't just to get by and not die. The goal is to be optimal, right? Now, free T3, functional ranges, I have it between, I usually do 3.1, but 3.3 to 4.4. And I say that because there's a lot of people right now that are doing keto or going high fat, low carb, and in the presence of less carbs, you're just not going to convert more thyroid hormone. So it's very much so likely that you're at 3.13 while in ketosis and completely fine. And that because T3 is according to how efficient your body is, right? If you have a lot of weight on your body that you need to lose, if your body's inefficient at burning fuel, like you're using a lot of sugar and carbs for fuel, you're going to need a lot more free T3, a lot more free T3. But we found in studies that weight loss and ketosis and fasting can bring down the need for that. So that's why I have that there. And if you are doing keto, I like to see a couple of days of refeeding with good, healthy carbs during the week of getting your lab work done to see what it does in the presence of increased conversion. And then reverse T3, I usually just want to keep it kind of in the lower quadrant, like at the halfway point or lower. Tpu antibody, the ranges are now under 9. Actually, with medical ranges, functional is just the lower the better, right? Lower the better. And then thyroglobulin, medical ranges are under a 0.9. That's where you want it functionally, as well as under a 1, under a 0.9. If you are taking thyroid medication, if you're taking a T3 medication, take it the morning of your test. So usually what I'll recommend, take it the morning, the next morning, try to get your lab work done in the morning, and then you can take your thyroid medication. Because if you take it too soon or that morning, it'll give you skewed results. Now, give yourself time. Healing the thyroid is going to be layered. The first step is identifying the correct lab, identifying where there's something that's off, right? Work on HPA, access the hypothalamus, pituitary, and your adrenals. Work on underlying deficiencies like minerals and supplements how you eat. Then go to the liver, the importance of things like vitamin D3. Then look at healing the gut. And then I will be honest with you. When I first started, I would do those first 4 steps and everyone was like so much better. But now we're just living in such a chronically toxic world. We have infections and underlying gut infections and these underlying like exposure to mold and Lyme and radiation that I'm seeing more and more people needing to kind of pull back that layer. So the idea isn't that you're going to heal this in 30 days. This thyroid issue, they have found that you can have thyroid antibodies for like 7 to 9 years before you have a symptom. So your thyroid could have this autoimmune issue for years. You've got to give yourself grace, and there's seasons where you can actively do protocols, seasons where you can rest, right? And there's seasons where you can do more stuff, and there's seasons where, again, you'll do less, right? But you've got to address each of these things when we're looking at getting well. So what I want you to take away from this is the thyroid is controlled by the HPA axis, which means anyone can develop a thyroid problem. So Maria was like, back in the day, like when I get a gallbladder attack, that was unheard of in a 16-year-old. Well, so it was like thyroid issues at 19. I have people making appointments for their 12-year-old and 9-year-old kids. That's right. It also works the adrenals and the ovaries. I will say that one thing to be aware of is that I like to make this connection that like the adrenals, it's like a triangle, like this 3-legged stool. I use a 3-legged stool for a lot of explanations, but when the 3-legged stool is going to be the adrenals, the sex hormones, and the thyroid hormone. And when one's off, it affects the other two, right? And even if you have not, you can always optimize your health. Don't, what is that? Don't fall for this lie don't fall for this lie that you can't get better and that you're stuck here. Your body was created to heal itself. It's an amazing self-healing, self-regulating, powerful body. A lot of the things that you are frustrated about with your body, a lot of the things that you're like, this stinks or this is a struggle, it's actually amazing that you've even gotten to this point, that your body has kept you up, that you've been able to wake up and go to work and take care of your family and be with your loved ones and friends and go to church and do all these things. Your body is listening to this right now. And while it's listening to it, it's pumping your heart, getting your lungs breathing, killing off cancer cells, killing off viruses and bacteria that you've, encountered all day today. It is amazing. You just got to give it the right things.
That's awesome. Dr. Rebecca, I'm sure people are wanting to know, what are the top mineral deficiencies you see with thyroid issues?
Yeah, selenium, that's a big one. And, there's a lot of conversation about iodine. And I will use iodine in certain situations, not all of them. And I don't recommend anyone do high dosing of iodine if they're not tracking their thyroid antibodies, because there's going to be more to it than just iodine. Like if you're high, it can be really hard. It can be really hard on your body. And it can increase thyroid antibodies, right? But one thing that it just doesn't get enough credit is selenium. Selenium works on the glutathione peroxidase, this complex, where the purpose of it is to protect your thyroid from inflammation and from free radicals. And we know that through the soil, minerals and amino acids are like huge, right?
Foundational.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's because our soil is so depleted. We know, I came across a doctor who was speaking on a study about how the soil, we know because of the soil, our vegetable content is 30% less of mineral content in vegetables and 15% less in 15% less in meat. So we just aren't getting it. And then add on to that like gut issues. So I love a complete mineral complex, but making sure getting enough selenium and glutathione, which is a really potent antioxidant, can be very helpful and very supportive.
Awesome. Yeah, we talk, my patients and I, we talk about toxicity all the time, and you and I have talked about, detox is kind of a lifetime thing. It's never a one and done. We're never going to not pump our gas. We're never going to be going in the swimming pool. And one thing I was thinking about when we were just talking about minerals and in our plants and so forth is, even if we go in the swimming pool, there's bromide in a lot of the chlorines that are in pools, and that will actually block you from absorbing iodine. And so again, and then of course we're not going to convert our T3 and our T4, we're not going to make that if we don't have iodine, and the same thing with selenium. And so it's just so important environmentally, all the things that we have around us. We're not going to get away from all of it. We're not going to not go swim with our kids, but yet we're going to continually detox and work this stuff out of us, and keep the liver open, all the filters going, and as high gut function as we can. And toxicity is massive. What did you find was some of your biggest toxicities when you kind of really delve into yourself?
Mercury. That's a big one. Amalgam fillings. I have 0 amalgam fillings. I have none. I surprisingly have had really great teeth. My mom has 7 that she's had since she was a child. There are studies that have looked at mercury level. I mean, it was a smaller study. I think they did like a 70. I think it was like 70, like mother baby pairs, and they found mercury levels and TSH levels in children. There's a connection there in how they're being affected, right? And so mercury was a big one for me. And I want to talk about another thing with chemicals, because when I would talk about halogens, I always talked about like bromine, and that's in wheat product and processed foods, and chlorine and fluoride, we know, like water and stuff like that. But what we're missing completely is that we are being exposed to chlorine and fluoride and bromine at unprecedented amounts because of polychlorinated chemicals and polyfluorinated chemicals, brominated chemicals. Those chlorine, fluorine molecules are in flame retardant chemicals, non-stick surfaces, the Teflon, your food packaging, where you open the freaking food packaging and it's like smooth in there, that non-stick surface, that's all of it. Like you sit down on a couch, you're exposed to it. So the idea isn't to run away from it, right? You're right. The idea is you control what you can. You control what you can, and then you detox the exposures that you've been exposed to. And I see a question here about, are fibroids related to low thyroid? And it's not. I will say that I think fibroids are there can be a connection there, and I'll let you know what the connection is, but fibroids are going to be more related to toxins. It's your inability to remove estrogen appropriately. That's one thing that we're seeing in studies over and over and over again, is environmental toxins that increase an estrogen metabolite called either 4-OHE1 or 16-OHE1. And so this is actually something that's even been in my own health history, is fibroids. Toxins. It usually, travels in family. A lot of times we see things in our family and we're like, oh, it's genes. No, that's all we think is genes. There's toxins that your mama and your grandmama, and even before this, you had a great grandparent that could have been exposed to a chemical, and it can still be passed down if it's not detoxed out of the body. We know it affects ovarian health. So fibroid's going to be more of a predominantly estrogen dominant growth issue. And when you are not getting rid of estrogen out of your body, it's going to reabsorb it, and it recirculates, and it feeds the growth, and it sustains those fibroids. And so when I said low T3 affects how your body functions, right? But low free T3, when it's suboptimal, when I say low, you don't have to be out of the range. You can be within the range and be on the low end of the range. You'll see a decrease of HCl production. When you have a decrease of HCl production, you don't have optimal digestion. You don't have optimal digestion. You can see decrease in pancreatic enzyme. You can see a decrease in gallbladder, like bile. You'll see a decrease of liver function, which, guess how you have to get rid of estrogen? Through the liver, gallbladder, and the gut. And if you don't have optimal amounts of free T3, you don't have an efficient way to get rid of this estrogen. You're just going to reabsorb it all. So that's kind of how that whole connection is. But it's the toxins, man, the toxins that mimic estrogen that we don't get out of our body because we keep reabsorbing it.
And they have a good name for them now. It's xenoestrogens. So, we get these estrogens from plastics and other various sources. So it's there is a name for it now, but it's the toxic stuff that creates that estrogen not being able to be metabolized out and excess production.
Yeah. And I think the more we talk about it, I was added, I was in a fibroid group because I like to see what people are talking about. And you've got to decide in your health journey if you're going to be a victim or you're going to be in charge, right? You've got to decide, like, do I want to be passive in my health journey and allow other people to do it and say that there's nothing I can do about it. It's all in my genes. Or do you want to say, I want to be in control? I want to live a life contrary to even maybe what a medical doctor can say is possible, because it is possible, and I've seen it over and over again through the years. I say that because when it comes to the thyroid, when it comes to the fibroids, really, it's been a predominantly female issue historically, gender bias within medicine, but now we're seeing it with men and low testosterone and depression and anxiety. But the idea is that this just happened to you. You just have fibroids, your thyroid just shut down, and there's nothing about it. Good luck. We'll keep an eye on it, and if it gets worse, we'll cut it out, right? But there's so much research, and there's so many practitioners like myself and Maria that see life change and see diagnoses being reversed and people coming off medications and seeing their health transformed because they said, no longer being a victim, I'm going to do something about that.
That was awesome. Do you guys have more questions? Is there anything else out there? Anybody wants to know about, anybody that has a question about Hashimoto's or, here we go.
So this is a question that's up for contention. Like, it's interesting. There is this idea that you could even do like an iodine patch test, but now there's questions about it evaporating and you thinking that it's being absorbed when in actuality it's not being absorbed. I think the best way, if you want to utilize iodine, is to consume it. Try to first consume it in a whole food natural source, but there's a brand like Systemic that has TMI. It's a good kind of natural food source type of iodine, and just going really, really slow with that. So the idea is that it might not be an efficient way to take in iodine because it can evaporate.
What type of foods have iodine?
If you guys like seaweed snacks, eggs, like fish, like a lot of things that you're thinking of that can come from the ocean, you're going to have higher chances of that. In fact, I was listening, or I think I read the study about people going to the ocean and how even being in the presence of the ocean, and maybe that's might be a different way to absorb the iodine, but how being near the ocean increases people's mineral status, just being in that type of environment. So,
all right, guys, we're moving.
Take a beach vacation. Be like, tell your partner, be like, all right, the doctor says I need to get my mineral status up, and just go to the beach.
That's probably why we feel so good when we come back. We're grounded. We have absorbed all these minerals, and yeah, no, that's exactly why we feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
Any other questions that anybody has burning desire?
Yeah. Well, and if anyone has any questions after the presentation, you can let me know, or you guys can shoot me a message on Instagram. Yeah, on Instagram, like social media, like, so we have the largest health radio station in our city. It's been going on for almost 6 years now, and that's what we're passionate about. And everyone's always like, when are you going to put in a podcast? When are you going to put on a podcast? We're going to try to do that. But on Instagram at drrebeccawarren.com. drrebeccawarren.com. You can check me out on there. Get that free thyroid ebook. On Instagram at Dr. Rebecca Warren, and on Facebook at Dr. Rebecca Warren. And then I did see one question here I wanted to touch on really quick about Raynaud's disease, autoimmunity. And I think we just downplay it the autoimmune issues are very severe issues. And in the presence of Tpo antibodies and thyroglobulin antibodies, you have this robust immune response. You will, it's not a matter of if, it's when you will develop another autoimmune issue. And so there is going to be the autoimmune connection there between if you have high thyroid antibodies and the autoimmune side of Raynaud's. So important to look at that in the sense of looking at the gut microbiome, making sure, first of all, the gut microbiome is good and well and supported, that there's no gut permeability. And then look at them. There's ways to help your immune system, right? Like modulate itself, things like fasting, intermittent fasting, ketosis, and there's different types of supplements and stuff like that too. But I mean, if you have Raynaud's and you've had thyroid and you've had it for a while, there's probably like a deeper trigger too, probably like maybe a mold, Epstein-Barr reactivation or something.
Yeah, I always say that an autoimmunity is really just the body waving a white flag. It's not that you're actually this label, let's just say ulcerative colitis or Crohn's, something like that. It's that something is in me, get it out, pay attention. And it's how it gets you to pay attention. And I love how you even checked on Epstein-Barr. Is this something that I love to look at with patients? I like to look at viral loads. Obviously, I love mold. But I found the study that just recently came out about Hashimoto's, and they looked at I don't know if it was over like 200 cadavers, but 85% of them had Epstein-Barr in the thyroid gland within those Hashimoto cadavers. So it's pretty impressive. I mean, there is a massive connection with Epstein-Barr and its sister cytomegalovirus, and absolutely with mold. I see 80% of my mold cases have some type of thyroid issue.
Yeah, it's the thing with like the mold. And I think we just downplay it too much. Oh, I got some black mold in the basement. The people that work with me, they know they don't play around. I have one person who was like, she just got pregnant and she was like, can I go see my parents? Like, she's literally asking me, can I go see my parents? There's mold there. I'm like, I would not. Absolutely not. And she was like, okay, then I'm not going. I'm like, absolutely not. The thing is that the problem with these things like viruses, and we're going to see it a lot more too with COVID, because there's a lot of people that are going into COVID metabolically unwell, not having a good metabolism, not having a good insulin glucose relationship. And we're going to see this with COVID, because these mold things and reactivation and viruses and stuff, what ends up happening is it just drains our body. It drains our body. The difference between something like mold with like COVID is that we might not be aware that every day our body is working overtime to deal with this onslaught of these mold toxins. And so we're going about our day as our body's being drained and drained and drained, and it's going to bring infections to the surface. It's going to bring underlying issues to the surface. It's going to accelerate aging. And aging isn't just meaning you're going to get more wrinkles. That's not what I'm talking about. Aging is at a cellular level. The older you are at a cellular level, the telomere length, the faster you're going to have disease, the more likely you're going to have disease. So that's what these types of things do, is like, once you get that foundational stuff ready to go, get on the hormones if you need it, get that gut cleared up, do some lymphatic work. I know you guys have kind of like the whole lymphatic system in your clinic.
Lymphpresso. Yeah, we definitely love our Lymphpresso. There was a question there about the mold and the thyroid connection, and I think if you can talk to Dr. Rebecca's picture, when you have mold toxicity, you get inflammation in the brain, in the hypothalamus. And where did all that start? The hypothalamus into the pituitary, right? And where does TSH come from? Quick pop quiz. Pituitary. Yeah. So that's how it starts to trickle down. That's how we get the trickle down effect with mold. And a lot of the diseases, and we have our vagus nerve that runs all the way down into our gut. So we have that gut and brain access. And we just tend to, mold spores tend to then culminate within the gut. And again, where does the thyroid where does it make its conversion for its T3? And you go into the gut, right? And so if you have mold spores within the gut, you have a double between brain and gut going on. And so you can kind of see how that all plays a role in how that it works on one upon another. And we don't get to fix one unless we fix the other.
Absolutely.
So I hope you guys enjoyed tonight. I learned so much. I hope all of you guys learned so much. You can follow us on Edge Integrative Wellness on social media. We're Edge IW on Instagram, as well as Edge Integrative Wellness on Facebook. And you can follow Dr. Rebecca Warren on all socials. She's also on Clubhouse if you guys want to talk again more with her. She's open and available there as well. She's really great at messaging back on Instagram, so you guys can always hit her up there. And if there's no further questions, we would love to have you back for a Thyroid 201 at some point. We really appreciated this. This is fantastic. And you guys, she stayed up late for us guys. She's got kids, and it's like 9:30 her time. So we appreciate her so much. Thank you again. I hope you have a blessed night.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Take care.